in this video, I got Peter from Janoshik Analytics, janoshik.com. I will put the link in the description of this video. And Peter, can you please tell us about your experience by testing DHT gels, peptides, and all the kind of things for our guys that are looking to improve DHT and so on? Maybe even your own recommendation for this community, how to avoid getting scammed, okay, how to not lose money on bad supplements and so on. Yeah, please.
So, hello, I'm Peter. And generally, we do testing of anabolic steroids. We do testing of peptide hormones. We also do testing of DHT gels here and there, but it's not the main focus of our business. But we've been seeing more and more of this sort of gels recently. Most of them don't turn out so well. They don't contain the compound advertised. We've seen some gels that contained testosterone instead of DHT. We've seen gels just this week that did not contain any active compound that we were able to see. Usually the dosage is not really consistent with the label as well. So I would be quite worried with products like this. Of course, you can have them tested with us. We work with individual clients as well. And I'm not really sure what to recommend about not getting scammed. I would generally look for... my apologies, that's my phone. I would avoid vendors that don't have any testing or reviews. It's always best to not rely on the tests of the vendor. Again, it's best to get your own tests done. A lot of people are from communities, they're pulling money for the tests. So you don't have to need to pay the entire sum of the testing. Which kind of works well in the various communities for niche subjects. About recommendations about some sort of vendor or anything like that, I can't do that for multiple reasons. First, and the most important for me personally, is we just can't go around recommending people as a testing lab. You know, we need to stay neutral, not associated with anyone. And I'd rather it to stay this way. There are, of course, some reports on our website that are published, and that is a paid service. If someone wants their report published on our site, they pay a small fee to keep it there for a limited amount of time. But we don't endorse those vendors. We don't believe that would be a good look for a testing laboratory. If you see a testing lab endorsing someone, it's usually a sign of them being associated with the manufacturer, which is always a bad sign, I believe. And the second, quite important reason is that DHT is scheduled. It's a regulated substance in Czechia, where we reside, and I can't really go around recommending people use scheduled substance that would leave me with some legal responsibility that I'd rather not have. That's about a quick sum up that I can provide you. Is there anything particular you'd like to hear about?
Okay, maybe also something about peptides, okay? Because peptides, they gain a lot of they are famous right now, okay? Many guys are using them, okay? So we also know that also many peptides are not like high in quality. So I have seen on your website that you are already doing many tests for peptides. So what about quality of peptides? How do you see it?
Well, generally, the peptide manufacturer, they're made with a process most of them are made with a process called solid state synthesis, which is or solid phase synthesis, not quite certain on that. I'm not big on manufacture, but the process to make them is quite cheap. The peptides are rather cheap. The vials themselves are oftentimes more expensive than the peptide inside. So surprisingly, most of the peptides are on point. They're on point with the label claims. Of course, the usual mistakes, the usual problems we're seeing is mostly with the bigger peptides. the bigger, the longer the molecule, the more likely it's to degrade, the more issues are likely to arise during the manufacture. What we see a lot of is replaced vials where some are malicious, like a product replaced with a different product of similar properties or lower dosage. Some of them are completely random. You know, the vials, they all look the same. If the color of the top is the same, there's a lot of chaos in the distribution and the manufacturing side of things. So we're seeing random switch ups, but I don't think most of them are malicious. It's just that the business, it boomed in recent years, and not everybody is handling the additional workload well. Generally, what is the most worrisome is, I posted about it just yesterday or day before that. They're applicators, you know, injection pens, and they're usually the most expensive because they're like Moniaro or Ozempic. They look like the expensive originals, not your usual peptide vial. And those, because they have a much higher profit margin, they attract more attention in this regard, and we're seeing those pens being faked. Just recently, we've seen a Monjaro Quick Pen, or however it's called, that's been containing no tirzepatide, no peptide that it was supposed to contain. Instead, it contained insulin, which is potentially lethal. And we've seen this over the years a couple of times, with insulin being the most dangerous peptide that there's commonly available. So I would advise caution, especially with dealing with products that are made to imitate the expensive pharmaceutical pen applicators, etc. We've seen the most dangerous issues with those that can actually harm the people. The other stuff, it's mostly random. It's best if you have your stuff tested, but generally we're not seeing too dangerous stuff. We're seeing some peptides, they contain living bacteria, hide endotoxin, but it's not like the subcutaneous application, which is used for most of the peptides. That's a rather safe route of application. Like if there's some bacteria, which there are, sometimes we see that in our tests. We do tests for bacteria and endotoxin. And if you use that, you are injecting living bacteria subcutaneously, which sounds bad in theory, but then you scratch your hand and basically the same thing happens outside, and it's not like you're getting serious issues. You're getting some redness, maybe some mild discomfort, but unless you already have major health issues, it's not really something that's gonna endanger you. We're not seeing flesh-eating stuff in those vials. It's mostly common ever-present bacteria. Interesting stuff, like the most common bacteria we find in the peptide vials is Serratia macroescens. I hope I pronounced it right. You know, the red stuff that grows in your bathroom. That's exactly that. That's exactly that. We can tell it because it's red, so we can identify it even without special equipment. So
it is kind of mold, or what is it? It is like mold bacteria, or?
Well, it's a bacteria. We're seeing molds here and there, but we have trouble identifying those. Well, where there's usual black mold, aspergillus, but the Serratia, it's a pretty interesting one. It grows like those tiny red dots, and it's easy to tell just by looking at the sample.
Okay, what about BPC? Have you also tested like oral version of BPC, or are you just testing injectable BPC? Because BPC is used quite often. Many people are talking about safety and the quality and so on. It is used a lot. What about your experience with, for example, BPC? Because many guys also tell that oral BPC is not as good as, for example, injectable.
While I'm mostly doing the analytics, so I can't tell for the effects. We don't really deal with the effects of the peptides, but we do test a lot of oral BPC in tablets, capsules, etc., etc. We're seeing a lot of arginine country on BPC, and it's a rather common test. We've been seeing that for quite a few years by now. But it's a bit more troublesome with the tablets and capsules because the dosages, they tend to vary between the tablets and capsules, even in the same batch, because the BPC, and we know that from our analytical background, it loves to suck water out of the air. So, and I can only imagine it's really difficult to make consistent homogeneous tablets or capsules with a compound that does this. It's just annoying to work with something that gets wet just from being on air.
Okay, so generally for DHT peptides, all these kind of things, it would be really good if you try to buy something from someone. You should probably look at the certificates. They probably should be up to date. Yeah. So if they got certificate from you, I know I heard a lot of good things about your lab. So probably that's at least some guarantee that they are not getting scammed or something. Yeah, am I right?
Yeah, well, if they have reports, they paid for them. If the lab is looking real, it's not easy to get the paperwork to test scheduled substances, such as steroids, DHT. So most of the lab certificates that you see on various sites, if it's not a well-known lab, a lot of them are simply made up. So I would suggest caution with that. And generally, when sending something for testing, it's best if you're sending in something blind. Like you don't have to disclose the manufacturer.
Okay.
You don't need to send it in the original container. You can just send 1 milliliter or 2 milliliters of the gel in some glass container. It's always the best to not provide this info. Is not necessary for the tests.
Okay.
So it's best if the testing lab, if you find one other than us, it's best if they don't have this information. You also don't need to provide the exact dosage. For example, it's good to know if you're testing DHT gel and it's supposed to be 100 milligrams per milliliter or 1 milligram per milliliter. It's good. Sometimes the lab, they need a general gist of the dosage if it varies a lot. But for example, if it's supposed to be 50 milligrams and you tell lab it's supposed to be 75, and you get result that says 75, you get a good idea that something's not like it should be.
Yeah.
So it's best to not be completely honest with the labs, to be honest just the right way, so you can be sure that you're getting valid results. Because a lot of the labs in this, let's say, black or gray market testing, they simply put up the label claim on the report, and that's what we're seeing happen a lot. For example, we've seen a DHT gel, and that was sent to us recently, like in September, and the guy, he sent it to 3 different labs. We didn't see any DHT in there. Then he sent it to another lab and they said, okay, there's 50 milligrams of DHT in this. And the guy is like, okay, but it was supposed to be 75. No, we're sure it's 50. Okay. And the third lab, they just sent him it's 75 milligrams of DHT. So we took a look at it. The second, we didn't find any DHT in it because it was DHT enanthate, which is not quite a common substance. And he was like, okay, so I got this data from those labs, and they're like, okay, so they're seeing something like DHT in there. We do see something like that, but it's not DHT, and you ordered test only for DHT. Do you want us to take a look at that compound? Okay, and we think it's DHT enanthate, and there's 75 milligrams of it. Okay, so, but this lab, the other lab, they told me it's 50 milligrams. Yeah, but they told you it's 50 milligrams of DHT which is roughly the amount of DHT that's in DHT enanthate, that's at 75 milligrams, because they used a different testing method and they focused only on the DHT part. And they didn't notice it's a different compound completely. No, well, not completely, but it's a different compound. And the third lab, when they asked him for more data, they just sort of made up a graph that said DHT 75 milligrams. So out of the 3 labs, 1 lab completely faked the result. The other lab, they didn't notice it's a different compound. They did, because they did the analysis. It's not like they were very wrong. The way they did the analysis, they focus on the DHT part of the molecule but the NMR. The NMR which they used, it's if they didn't focus on the fact it had the enanthate tail, they just didn't notice it. They did a good job anyway. But we do a different type of analysis, and we just like, okay, is there DHT? No, there isn't, and that was it for us.
Okay, probably the type of DHT would be not active or somehow useful, probably in this composition with gel or something, because it can be used injectably, but probably with no efficiency in gel or something,
Well, I do have a little pharmaceutical background in this. I studied med school in Prague, and for pharmaceuticals to be absorbed through the skin, they need to have a certain molecular mass. So the smaller the molecule, for example, DHT, I don't know, is 300 Daltons, 215, I don't know off the top of my head. That's the ideal candidate for, you have a DMSAO usually, or some sort of a gel, and it can absorb through the skin easily. But the bigger the molecule gets, the more difficult this is getting. And let's say the DHT enanthate, it's 420 or something, 420 Daltons. It's not only, it's more difficult to absorb to the skin, not in a major way, but let's say I'm pulling this number of, I have no idea, but let's say it's 20% less efficient because of the size of the molecule. And then the enanthate is 20% more or 30% of the molecular mass. So for 10 milligrams of DHT gel and 10 milligrams of DHT enanthate gel, you're getting 50% less usefulness or biological activity or something like that. I made those numbers up because there's no way to do it off the top of the head without testing. But the general rules, they go like this.
Normally in Europe we have these, I think 2% Andractim gel or something. I have already seen like 10%, 20% DHT gels. Yesterday one client sent me a link for 70% some Russian DHT gel, but honestly I don't see any useful application of these, because you just need proper amount of DHT in your blood, so in order to get all the benefits. So maybe my last question is, what about like injectable DHT, and maybe your recommendation for my subscribers?
Well, I frankly have no idea about anything like that. About the high percentage gels, I have a slight doubt that you would be able to fit 70% of DHT into any gel, but that's I don't think that would be physically possible. And about injectable DHT versus gel DHT, I do know very little about this. I don't know about the use. I generally only know the surprising recommendation I'm hearing from the urologists, etc., and the people dealing with testosterone replacement therapy. But this is not regarding DHT. I don't think it's really used much in the current therapy regimens. But for the testosterones, the publications, they claim that the gels are much better handled and they provide higher life satisfaction and higher overall ratings than the injectables. Contrary to popular belief, because for a long time it was believed that the injectable testosterone is going to work better for the people. but they made studies according to the urologists I talked about this, that the people who use gels are generally much better off regarding well-being.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprised me. So that's pretty much all I know about the topic. I think it might be applied to the DHT gels. I honestly don't know, but that's all I know in regard to the topic.
Yeah, like you said, it's I think superior from the point of view that you are getting more DHT, because injectable can convert a lot to estradiol, and topical can convert more to DHT. Yeah? So probably that's the main reason. Okay, so
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I just can try to extrapolate from what I know from the studies, and I prefer, given my background, I prefer to be very conservative about treatments, and I like to rely on what we already know and try to extrapolate from that. But I think it will usually work out to everyone's personal preference and experience.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Peter, a lot for your inputs. Okay, so for your knowledge. So yeah, thanks a lot, and hope we hear us next time. Okay, have a great like. I will put everything, if you want to test something, I will put everything in the description, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Goodbye. Have a great day.
Bye.